up to the release of Christopher Nolan's Tenet, I'm reviewing each of his films in release order. I had to take a little break in the middle of the series because Tenet got delayed again, but we're back, and today we are talking about Inception. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Share your take on Inception. This will be a spoiler review, so I will be talking about specific plot points. If you haven't seen Inception, go watch Inception right now, come back, and then join in the comment section. But in the comment section, you don't need to put spoiler warnings because this is a spoiler review. Thus, people have been warned by the video itself. This is one of those movies that when it first came out, the hype for it was unbelievably large. This was the point in time where Christopher Nolan transitioned into becoming the legend that he's been for the last 10 years. It was his follow-up to The Dark Knight, which put him on everybody's radar, this beloved movie, and then this trailer comes out for this film that looks trippy and it's weird and there's like bending cities and they're going into dreams, and we're like, what? The guy that did The Dark Knight is telling this strange heist dream movie with Leonardo DiCaprio? I've got to go check this thing out. And once it did come out, it was a massive success, both at the box office and with critics. It just got people talking. At the point in time it came out, I was working with teenagers in a church setting and actually wrote a series of videos for a retreat that I was doing based around Inception, that had people going into someone's dreams to try and learn how to play dodgeball. It was a very strange little video that I did that combined Inception, Empire Strikes Back, and the movie Dodgeball all into one incredible thing. But this movie absolutely got people talking back when it came out. And kind of going into the origins of when it came from, it actually started out because Christopher Nolan was reading an old DuckTales comic book about Scrooge McDuck breaking into someone's mind to try and go into their dreams to discover some treasure. Okay, that didn't actually happen, but fun fact, there actually is a DuckTales comic book from like before 10 years before Inception came out that has a plotline very similar to the plotline of Inception, thus leading to a ton of internet theories as to what was Christopher Nolan's true inspiration for this film. But when it came to Inception, this is a movie that Nolan did come up with the idea for it 10 years before he was able to make it. When he was just kind of brainstorming ideas, he had this original version of it and started kind of working out what he would do when he had the ability to do it.
The idea that has always fascinated me about dreams is the realization that everything within that dream is created by your own mind as you experience it. And then the realization that as you absorb that world, you're not aware of the fact that you've actually created it. So if you're talking to somebody in a dream, you're supplying both halves of that conversation, but you seem to be experiencing just from one half. And I think that what that says about the potential of the human mind is quite extraordinary. And Inception is intended to be a film that tries to explore the exciting possibilities of what that says about the human mind and the infinite potential of the human mind.
And throughout that process, he came up with the idea that a heist would be the best genre to kind of blend with it.
It all really started from just an interest in dreams and the relationship with films and portrayal of dreams in films. And what I felt I'd never seen was the portrayal of a dream that you could believe in its reality. That is to say, one of the key lines in the film is dreams feel real while we're in them.
And he was always inspired by the classic Bond films from the 60s and 70s. And so he went into this movie almost thinking that this was his opportunity to make a Bond film. So when you get into the snow sequence, you can especially see that in the film. And then after Batman Begins, he'd gotten a lot more prestige at the studio. Of course, The Dark Knight came out, unbelievably massive hit that basically gave him the freedom to do some of these crazier projects, and they allowed him to take this weird dream heist movie and turn it into Inception. With that said, let's get started talking about the good. Right off the bat, this movie feels like a prime example of an expertly crafted, complex story with dense world building. And what I mean by that is that it's a film that every detail is meticulously put together. What happens at the beginning, hints at and sets up what pays off at the end of the film. There's no wasted moments, there's no wasted dialogue or details. Everything matters from beginning to end, and everything that happens at the end was set up earlier in the film, whether a character moment or whether you're talking about some tension, conflict. There's all a rationale for why it happens. It doesn't just happen suddenly. But it's not just that it's expertly crafted, it's also incredibly complex. It's a world that has so many rules to it that are detailed. There's a lot of information that the characters and the audience need to know to understand what's going on. And the film is able to actually communicate all this information to you while telling a story that's interesting, that has human characters at their core, that have desires, heartbreaks, flaws, as well as delivering all of the blockbuster action that you want from a film of this budget. I've talked about it before, but like the movie Die Hard to me is another example of a meticulously crafted script where everything that happens matters and pays off. Everything is set up properly. There's no wasted moments, details, and it delivers all the action. Inception is like that, except the world is a lot more complex. Die Hard, really straightforward. Guy goes to a party, terrorists take over, and he has to take out the terrorists to save his wife. And you understand the world because it's basically the real world. Inception, it's also meticulously crafted, but there's so many more rules that have to be explained, that you have to understand of this strange dream world and the multiple layers of it. And it manages to tie all of it together. One of the big achievements here is that it's able to deliver this massive amount of exposition, explaining the rules, but doing it in a way that's interesting and makes sense in the context of the movie. So it kicks off with this opening sequence that helps you understand the big picture of what they're doing as these people that go into dreams, and there's multiple layers to them, and they use deception. So it helps you understand the nature of what we're doing while being this interesting, exciting action sequence. Then the next basically 45 minutes of the movie is all exposition and introducing new characters, which in other movies would be really boring. But it finds a way to do this while showing us cool stuff and entertaining us. It's very much kind of like the training sequence in The Matrix in certain regards, to the middle of that movie where Neo is learning all about the world of the Matrix. It's a long sequence of people teaching him information the audience needs to know, but it does it in the context of martial arts fights. That's what this movie does here, where you have Ellen Page is recruited for the team, and so then you have Cobb, Leonardo DiCaprio's character, teaching her about this world while walking through one of these dreams. And so they're saying things that could get dull if we were sitting at a table somewhere. But as they are sitting at a table, the world explodes around them. Or as he's explaining what you can do, she starts bending the world and rewriting the rules, so it all looks really cool. As we start introducing characters, we meet Tom Hardy's character, and he starts gossiping, and he's charming, and he's saying stuff about Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character. So it's fun and intriguing just to see this guy kind of banter a little bit, but then it leads immediately into a chase. And so we're going into action. It doesn't linger on any of the dialogue, any of the exposition too long without doing something that entertains us. And even as we go into these worlds, when we're explaining all these rules or the tricks for what they're going to do in the heist, how do they visualize it? Well, they have like a staircase that leads back into itself that breaks the rules of actual reality, but that you can do in a dream sequence. And it looks like a three-dimensional Escher drawing brought into the real world. It's all really cool to look at, while also helping us understand everything that we need to know when we get into the complex world of the actual heist inside of someone's mind. In interviews, Christopher Nolan's talked about how one of the techniques he likes to use with his storytelling is layering multiple plot lines happening at the same time and intercutting between them.
Based on a concept from music called a shepherd progression or shepherd tone. It's a series of ascending notes on a scale that, by emphasizing in volume different elements of the scale, it can continuously go up like a corkscrew effect or a barbershop pole. It's always rising. As one storyline is peaking, another one is building, and the third one is just starting out.
And how you have a storyline that's building toward its crescendo, and as this one crescendos, you have a second one that's kind of coming in behind it, so you have this sense of constantly building and payoff while never really arriving. You have the moment of payoff, but you have this get to the second layer that's still building, so you just have this continuing sense of momentum. And this movie is almost the ultimate example of that, as that's the entire nature of the plot line of the layered dreams and the multiple layers to the characters of what's going on with them and the multiple layers of interpretations to everything that's happening, that as one kind of reaches crescendo, we have the next one is layered on top of it, and then another one to where you have like 5 layers of storytelling going on to a degree that only someone of Christopher Nolan's caliber and ability to handle a lot of thoughts all at once could actually make sense out of this and balance them all and continue the momentum while delivering the payoff and having it all being coherent and understandable. And so this, what he does in the last half of this movie with so many different layers taking place, is classic Christopher Nolan at his prime, entertaining an audience while also in other ways showing off to an extreme level of what he is able to do as a storyteller, juggling a ton of storylines all at once.
You made something that was completely unique, and I would argue probably unique in film history, which was this kind of Matryoshka stacking doll reality that was challenging to follow, but thrilling to know that you had got it right.
In this layering and complexity of storytelling, it doesn't just apply to the story as a whole, and it's not just the fact that it's layers of dreams. He even intertwines this into the individual character arcs. Early on in the film, it establishes this mystery about what happened with Cobb's wife. And then we learn a little bit more information that he can't see his kids. Like, why can't he go back and see his kids? And then we learn a little bit more about their backstory of using Inception. And there's always this intrigue and always this question of why. What else happened? Well, how did she die? And why do they think that he killed her? Why does he feel guilty for what happened? What happened that first time he used Inception? So while you have all the conflict and the big action that's driving the movie forward, you also have layers of intrigue even on the little character journeys. So as much as you have layers and complexities when it comes to the story overall, it has that same amount of detail when it comes to building intrigue and mystery surrounding Cobb's backstory and his relationship with his wife. All of these details kind of adding together to create a movie that constantly makes you wonder what's going to happen next. And once again, being incredibly complex with so many different layers. But Nolan's able to hold it together, and he's able to keep us informed of everything that we need to know and set up everything properly in the first half to be paid off on the big story, on the dreams, on the heist, and even when it comes to this relationship with the wife.
There's not many directors that can pull this off. How do you keep it all together? How do you not go home at night and rip out your hair?
Well, sometimes I do, yeah. I just find it much more interesting to be able to challenge yourself on a project, to be given the opportunity that so many aspiring filmmakers would kill for, employ all of the technical devices that we do in the film, travel the world and put all these sort of big action set pieces on screen and in the service of ideas that you're fascinated by. It's a huge privilege, really, and so I just enjoyed it tremendously, quite frankly.
Beyond that, I think that this is the Christopher Nolan movie that has the coolest and the best action in it. If you checked out my reviews of Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, as much as I love those movies, I think that the actual action in those action movies is not the best, both in the way that they're filmed, well, especially in the way they're filmed, but then even the choreography itself, it's just not very interesting, enticing, and doesn't do much to make action better. For all the ways that The Dark Knight made the superhero genre better, the actual action itself it's a lot of just straightforward punches and elbows. It's not very interesting. But when you get to the movie Inception, there's all kinds of just interesting ways that they do action, both incorporating the way that there's multiple time frames, the way that one layer affects the next layer. So of course, all this stuff with Joseph Gordon-Levitt in the hotel, where on the layer above it, the car's in free fall and flipping, so this hotel has freaky gravity in it, and so he's battling a guy. It's very cool looking, and then even as it moves on to the next section where he's having to like figure out how to do a jump and he's floating in this space. It's not a fight sequence, but it's still interesting to look at. And there's like an intelligence to trying to figure out what exactly he's trying to do in those moments. That is classic Nolan applied to action itself. And even the way the hallway fight is filmed, they didn't go CGI, they didn't do it in front of a green screen. They had a rotating room where you can see that like Joseph Gordon-Levitt is involved in on the action as they're rotating a room, doing this crazy zero-G thing that looks cool, but it's also exciting, and it makes perfect sense in the context of the movie. And then, of course, beyond that, you also have trippy world building stuff where walls are building. You have the snow sequence, that's his James Bond sequence, inspired by all the films that he grew up watching. And the other reason the action sequences work so well is that the movie is designed in a way to keep adding conflict. Once again, the conflict isn't as simple as we just need to go in and do this heist. As soon as you get in, all these new layers are built into everything that can go wrong. So they show up, and you immediately discover that Cillian Murphy has had his brain trained, and so they can't just do their mission as easily as they thought because there's these troops all setting up. One of the members of their team gets shot. That's a bad thing. Then they realize because they're sedated, they don't wake up when they're killed or injured. So the rules we established before, now we realize a complexity to this because of the sedation, the thing they need to do to be able to do Inception at the level that they want. Layers built upon layers. And then once this happens, Cobb has to reveal that he knew this was a possibility, that this would happen, that they would be in more danger, therefore trust in the team is broken. So very quickly, as soon as the mission starts, 4 layers of additional conflict are added into it. So everything that happens suddenly has more stakes. Every line of dialogue between them has more tension in it in a movie that was already tense and already had conflict. Once again, back to the brilliance of Nolan and his ability to layer things and earn it. Actually set it up properly. Give us the rules at the beginning so when he adds complications, we understand why this is really bad. A few more great things about this movie. I love some of the character dynamics, in particular between Tom Hardy and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. You have a movie that's mostly pretty serious, and it has action and spectacle and fun, but the characters, most of them are pretty intense. And so then you add a couple guys in there that just can break the tension a little bit, that have a fun banter between them, where each of them has ways in which they kind of roll their eyes and shrug the other person off, but they also have a mutual respect. It's an example of 2 people that know the other person is really good. They just have differing opinions on how things should be done, and it just makes for a nice dynamic inside of the film. Of course, Hans Zimmer's score here is pretty phenomenal. I mean, of course, he's one of the best of the last 30 years, and this is another example of it. It has one of those, some of the music in this is so good that if you go on YouTube and look up motivational videos, you will hear the main theme from this movie in a whole bunch of these videos with people giving speeches that are inspirational, and then the build-up from this movie taking place underneath it. But whether it's tense scenes, exciting scenes, or epic scenes, Hans Zimmer delivered the goods. And the final 2 big positives here. This, to me, might be the most emotional of the Christopher Nolan films in that it has all the spectacle, of course. It has all the big, clever ideas. But then the thing that he did so well is making Cobb a very broken character. that feels deep regret over what happened with his wife, that desperately wants to get back to his kids. And because there's that mystery where we keep having these revelations about what happened in that backstory, you constantly feel it. All of it leading up to the final moment in the film, this ambiguous ending to where he's got his totem and he does this spin and like, does it stay up? Does it teeter a little bit? Was all this a dream? Did he ever get to leave those lower realms, or is he still stuck there? Has he been stuck there this whole time? All that ambiguity is okay because the movie made at its core that very emotional character journey that to him, he gets to the end of it. It doesn't matter to him whether he's accepted the dream as his reality or whether he's really gotten out and been able to be reunited with his kids. He's accepted that. And that to me is what kind of makes this one just such a powerhouse emotionally, because it has all the layers, it has all the intelligence, but it also at its core really has a character that you care about, whether he gets back to his kids or just accepts that he lives in a dream now. That's what we want. And then even beyond that, the thing that I always loved about the end of this movie is that wherever you fall on your interpretation of that final moment, it's earned. The movie is incredibly complex, as I've said way too many times already in this video. It has so many layers to it, but you get to the end of the film and you can interpret it multiple ways. There's evidence in both paths. The rules established make you go, okay, it could be this or it could be that. And it's earned. That's when you know you have a brilliant, brilliant film that was incredibly well crafted, even though it's incredibly complex. From there, we got to mention the bad. Obviously, I love this film and I respect this film greatly, so these are not big criticisms, but they are things that kind of come to mind. First off, for a movie that's about dreams, it never really gets as wild, crazy, zany, and chaotic as our actual dreams are. There's a certain lack of logic to actual human dreams where you turn around and you're in a different place and then something wacky happens and then you're falling and then you're flying. You have superpowers and then there's naked people, and you don't really get that in this movie. It's very much a structured Christopher Nolan version of dreams that are more like Escher drawings brought to life in the movie Dark City and spy movies, more so than the wackiness that is most humans' dreams. Second kind of issue with this movie is that, and this really isn't even an issue, it's just a thing to mention, because it is so layered and complex and there's so much stuff going on, you can really overlook great things in this movie. Like there's this phenomenal snow skiing sequence that, as I've mentioned twice before, is Christopher Nolan's take on a Bond movie that you basically forget is in this film. It's this very cool shootout. It's like the best shootout in a Nolan movie, and you totally forget about it because there's all these layers that you're following along. And so when there's so much stuff, something you're going to miss, a conventional spy skiing shootout sequence, you'll overlook that in light of Joseph Gordon-Levitt having a zero-G fight in a hallway and going into people's dreams. It's a little bit more compelling than this awesome chase sequence. And like I said, these are not major criticisms. It's just something that's interesting, the stuff that you don't notice in this film that you would absolutely notice in any other film. And finally, this is a movie where I'm more mesmerized by the craft than I fully enjoy it. Now, I'm about to give this movie a phenomenal score with a very high entertainment score on it. But it's a movie that, as I look at what he did, I'm just amazed and blown away by what Christopher Nolan did with this script. And my actual level of enjoyment when I watch the film is not quite as high as my respect for the film. It's one of the reasons that I like to do both a letter score as well as a number score, so that you can fully appreciate the fact that sometimes you're like, wow, that was just phenomenal what that person just did in that filmmaking and that storytelling. Being like, yeah, but I didn't necessarily enjoy it and feel as much satisfaction as I did amazement. So once again, I'm about to give this movie a fantastic score. Real quick before I give you my final score on this one, be sure to tell me what you thought down below in the comments section. Do you also love this movie, or do you find it to be a little bit overrated? I'd love to hear your take on it. Also remember, this is part of a series where I'm reviewing all of the Christopher Nolan movies. You can check out the rest of those reviews right up here in this playlist. To me, Inception is an incredible achievement in cinema. It's complex, and it's also perfectly crafted, where everything is... To me, Inception is an incredible achievement in cinema. It's complex, but wonderfully crafted. It has big, lofty ideas, but they're all explained, and the movie is still enjoyable. It has an incredibly complex world that has to be explained, but all the exposition is actually exciting. It delivers on everything. I love this movie. Overall, I'm giving this one an A+. On the entertainment scale, only a 9 out of 10. And this is a movie you gotta go watch. If you haven't seen it, what are you watching this review for? Go watch Inception right now. Remember, you can check out the rest of my reviews in this series right over there in that playlist. And after Tenet comes out, I will be ranking all the Nolan films, so that should be a lot of fun. And keep talking movies too much.